the sensitive investigation. I wasn't technically a special counsel under that regulation, but the bottom line is, Senator, that it's my job to make sure that all investigations are conducted independently, and whether it's a law or a statute or some other mechanism, I would ensure that every investigation is conducted independently.
My time's up. I have 2 more points on that question, but I'll do that in the second round. Senator Feinstein.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rosenstein, earlier this year, the entire United States intelligence community made public its assessment that Vladimir Putin ordered a Russian influence campaign designed to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. The goal was to undermine public faith in the United States democratic process and to harm the campaign of Secretary Clinton in favor of President Trump. I am very concerned. I've been 6 years the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and on it for 16 years. So I've followed this closely, have had the Gang of 8 briefings, and feel very certain that the reports of the intelligence community are in fact correct. Have you read either the final classified or unclassified versions of the intelligence community's assessment regarding the Russian government's interference with the 2016 presidential campaign?
Senator, I'm certainly familiar with the issue from media accounts. I obviously have not read any classified report concerning it because it's not within my official responsibility as U.S. Attorney for Maryland. And I don't believe I've read the unclassified report. I believe I've read summaries in the media.
Well, I'm going to ask that you do that before your nomination comes up, if it does on the floor, if you will. Will you read those reports?
I think, Senator, if I were to become Deputy Attorney General, it would be essential for me to read those reports, probably the classified as well, if there is such a report. I don't think I'm authorized to do that.
Well, why don't we find out? You're number 2 now.
No.
Or will be number 2.
Yes. I think it's very important, Senator. I think that's a really valuable point, and I appreciate your raising it because the media reports actually have, I think, created some confusion about that. I am the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. I have no role in managing the department. So,
right. No, I understand that.
Yes.
It was my fault. I misspoke. So thank you. Let me go on to the question of special counsel. And I mentioned in my opening remarks that when Valerie Plame's covert identity was revealed by someone in the Bush White House, Attorney General Ashcroft recused himself, and then Deputy Attorney General Comey promptly assigned Patrick Fitzgerald to be a special prosecutor with plenary authority to investigate and prosecute that case. Now, given the recusal by the Attorney General and the intense political interest in this matter and the strong potential that the investigation will in fact involve individuals associated with the White House, it would seem that this situation also rises to the level of extraordinary circumstances that warrant a special counsel under the regulations. Given all of this and the heightened level of distrust on all sides, do you support the appointment of an independent special counsel to look into these matters?
Senator, my understanding of this, and again, it's based solely on media accounts at this point, my understanding is that at least one of your colleagues called for a special counsel for something related to this matter while Attorney General Lynch was in office in early January, and she rejected the request. And based on the media accounts, I believe she said exactly what I said, that she had confidence in the career professionals of the department, but she had an additional piece of information. She presumably knows the facts, and I didn't, and she rejected that request. Currently, Senator, we have an acting Attorney General for this matter, Dana Bente. He was appointed U.S. Attorney by President Obama. And if there were a need for special counsel, he currently has full authority to appoint one. So I don't know at this point if Attorney General Lynch or Acting Deputy Attorney General Bente are right or wrong, but I certainly wouldn't be in position to overrule them without having access to the facts that are the basis for their decisions.
So I'm trying to figure out what your bottom line is. I interpret that as a no. Is that fair?
Well, I don't know, Senator. I think the answer is I'm simply not in position to answer the question because I don't know the information that they know, the folks who are in the position to make that decision. And when I am in that position, I don't presume that Attorney General Lynch and Acting Deputy Attorney General Bente are correct. I have a lot of respect for them, but if I determine that they're mistaken, then I would overrule them.
Thank you. I understand. Ms. Brand, if I may, while at the National Chamber Litigation Center, you led regulatory litigation directed against regulations to protect workers' rights and the environment. The President has now issued 2 executive orders aimed squarely at eliminating regulations. The first requires that 2 federal regulations be identified for elimination for every new regulation. The second requires regulatory task forces in each agency to make recommendations on repealing, replacing, and modifying existing regulations. As you may know, not all of the rules required by Dodd-Frank have been finalized or fully implemented, despite the fact that it's been nearly 7 years since it became law. By one measurement, over 100 rules still remain to be finalized, nearly a third of all the rules required by Dodd-Frank. It is concerning to me that these rules may not be proposed or finalized at all under the regulatory position of this administration, simply because there aren't hundreds of others found to offset. What is the legal justification for arbitrarily failing to issue a regulation called for under law simply because there aren't 2 regulations on the books to eliminate?
Well, thank you, Senator Feinstein. I am aware of those executive orders generally. I haven't studied them as I'm not yet in the department. With respect to the executive order ordering a review of regulations on the books, my recollection is that President Obama issued something quite similar during his term in office, and I haven't studied what the results of that study were. In terms of the other executive order, again, I haven't studied it, but I think that any regulatory action taken by any agency of the government has to comply with the requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act, which require reasoned decision-making. That statute remains in place, but as to the interplay between the APA and the executive order, those decisions would fall in the first instance to the regulatory agencies themselves, but I would have to study it further.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Hatch.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first say that I agree with you that there is no legitimate basis for asking the Attorney General to appear before this committee. It is unseemly at best to demand a hearing before the Attorney General has had a chance to address this matter further, as he has now done. Skipping that basic step of fairness makes it look like this is more about publicity and partisan posturing than anything else. At least it looks that way. Responding to written questions after his hearing, the Attorney General stated if a matter arose where he believed his impartiality might reasonably be questioned, he would, quote, consult with department ethics officials regarding the most appropriate way to proceed, unquote. Now, that is exactly what he did. I wish I could say the same thing about his predecessor. She would not recuse herself from the investigation into Secretary Clinton's misuse of classified information. My Democratic friends had nothing to say about that. And like I said, this kind of double standard makes it at least look like partisan politics. I'd hoped we could start depoliticizing the Justice Department. Now let me turn to the nominees before us today. I want to congratulate both of you. You're excellent lawyers. I have great respect for each of you. Both Mr. Rosenstein and Ms. Brand are familiar to us, and I think each is well qualified in being asked to lead the Justice Department. Mr. Rosenstein, let me just ask you this question. I am the Senate sponsor of the Rapid DNA Act. It would allow the use of rapid DNA technology to help analyze crimes, exonerate the innocent, and prevent DNA extensive or analysis backlogs. Do you support the effort to allow DNA samples collected and analyzed with the use of rapid DNA technology to be included in the National DNA CODIS database?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the details of the legislation, but as you describe it, it certainly sounds like it would be a valuable tool for law enforcement. I think it's critically important that we arm law enforcement officers